So I checked the date of when I was meant to release the next Ramble, and I realised I was a day late. So hi everyone, welcome to the next Ironman Ramble video. This is meant to be a monthly thing, released in the middle of each month on the 15th, but turns out that I forgot what day it was. It just so happened that yesterday I was at university doing a few writing courses, working on my dissertation, revising for an exam I have today actually. I have it in a couple of hours. And I'm currently just going through the revision for that now. But what I thought I'd do was just record the Ramble now, kind of have it in a short time window where I had to kind of rush things, because having them a bit more concise is probably the best way to do it. If I ramble on too much about too many different things, then it's not necessarily the best thing. Although I have had some people tell me that having longer videos to watch is really beneficial to them. Something like an hour long or so is really a ramble where they could zone out, do things they were doing in game anyway, but having someone to listen to, having content to listen to on the side, you know, it's something really fulfilling. So I'm going to give you guys that and see how far I get with it. I have a few topics where I want to talk about this month. I wrote them down on a notepad as usual, and I'm just going to touch on them for a bit, see where it takes me, and then end from there. Currently what I'm doing is I'm blood runecrafting. If you didn't know, GP is a massive factor on Ironman, and blood runecrafting with the GP that you make makes up the difference on runecrafting XP you would get from soul runecrafting. Bloods are just worth more GP if you sell them, and you use bloods more than souls regardless. This just means that you end up needing more bloods throughout your 200 mil all session, essentially. So crafting bloods is actually quite worth it. And it also just so happens that this is the best way to train your runecrafting post 99 if you don't have essence. I currently do have essence, but if I didn't have essence I would be here. So and the amount of essence you get through doing everything you need to do currently for 200 mil is only around worth like 35 mil experience. I've done like 7 mil of that in essence so far, and I don't need to, so the rest of it I have to make up doing blood runecrafting. So it just so happens that one of the most AFK methods in the game is EHP for us, which is quite nice. So it allows me to do this knowing I'm being one-to-one efficient essentially, while doing other things which don't require the attention I need on the screen as much. So I might be stuck here for a while. I haven't necessarily mathed out whether or not it's worth wearing Prospector here. What I'm theorizing is that it takes 55 seconds to run from Dark Altar to the Blood Altar just normally, and you can only do that full run and then back to here with 75 energy or more. If you have to go from the Dark Altar, teleport to your house, use the pool, use the fairy ring, and then run, that takes 56 seconds. So it's like a 2 or 3 tick, like 1, 2 or 3 tick delay essentially. So if you work out the 2.5% increase in mining XP you get from this per hour, it works out to be around 46k experience an hour, if you account for the experience gained in the ticks that you waste in air quotes essentially. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily worth it in that case, but I'm wearing it currently and I'm just going to see how it comes out. It's essentially the same thing. The graceful method is faster per lap, but maybe the time spent teleporting to your house is worth the time, worth the mining XP you gain from it. Anyway, disregarding that, let's get into some other topics. So real life stuff. My dissertation is due in the middle of April, and currently it's the middle of January, so I have a couple months to finish it. The worrying thing about my dissertation, though, is that I haven't got my ethics through yet, which means that I need to sort that out as soon as possible. What I can do is collect data throughout all of February and mid-March, so that gives me like a month and a half to 2 month period where I have data collection, and I can start writing the the sections I don't need my data on essentially. So my introduction, my reasons for doing the research, the methodology, and some sort of the wider implication discussions of it, even though I haven't necessarily done the research yet. I can do the cursory literature review and research for that, and really prepare to structure my dissertation in a way which will make it very easy for me to insert the results of my research into it. What I'm currently researching is the personality predictors of political correctness. And the trouble with that is that political correctness as a construct hasn't necessarily been measured psychometrically yet. So having to come up with a psychometric battery of tests which kind of describe what we're defining as a propensity not to offend a perceived marginalized group, or perceived like marginalized individual. Marginalized being the implicit assumption that they are being discriminated against for something that's out of their control. So their race, their gender, just their neuro condition, so any mental disorders that they may have, any genetic disorders they may have, all these isms that are kind of thrown out to anyone who wanted to be smeared by them. The propensity to defend that population in society. What I'm theorizing, what my hypothesis is at the moment, and this hasn't been tested, is why it's a hypothesis, is that it plays on the motherly nature of personality. So in particularly the agreeableness trait. So compassion and politeness, essentially. You feel compassion, empathy, and politeness for what you perceive to be marginalized, even if they are not, which happens to be the case. But I think it's an over abundance of this agreeableness, where it spills into totalitarianism, essentially, where you act as if you know better than they do, and so you have to protect them because they are incapable of doing it themselves. It's a very backwards way of kind of perceiving someone who you're deeming to be marginalized, because what you're doing essentially is that the reason why they can't help themselves is because of their position they're in, because of the circumstances they were born into. It completely forgoes self-agency in terms of self-determination and being able to decide exactly what you want to do with your life and not having anyone tell you what to do. So it's very anti-liberal, essentially. So that's kind of what I'm working on my dissertation on. I am generally very much interested in political belief. Not necessarily belief in general, because belief in general is a massive topic, but political belief is very interesting to me, because I feel like the paradigms in which we're discussing political belief at the moment is insufficient for the types of discussions we need to have about modern society. And hopefully I can have a psychological explanation for this as to reasons why people believe the things they do in terms of politics and how it manifests itself in contemporary situations, kind of linking it back to historical situations in which the same type of situations came about in society and the way people reacted to them. Maybe there's some sort of natural through line in which these things are always a constant, and this is just a recent manifestation of it. Time is a flat circle, as it were. So that's kind of what I'm working on in real life at the moment. Moving away from that, we did a podcast recently. I think it was near the start of January, so like a week ago or so. I uploaded that to my channel, so if you want to watch the latest Ironman podcast, then feel free to watch that. It was very enjoyable. I quite like. I don't think I performed that well on it. I feel like my answers were kind of scripted. I did write out my answers to the questions beforehand, and I think if I do another podcast, then I probably won't be looking at the questions beforehand. I'll just kind of I'll look at the order in which we go about them, but I won't be consciously thinking about the answers to the questions. Like, I'll hear the question and then I'll just kind of riff off it, and so it feels like a bit more natural. I felt like my answers were super stock. They were just really well scripted because I wanted to come across well or something, but it didn't really. When I listened back to it, it just wasn't as free flowing as it is now, me talking into this microphone on the ramble. You know, I kind of want to convey my opinions through this kind of ramble format, and it being kind of scripted wasn't necessarily the best format for me, so I'll work on that. Now, back into the game. I've been slowly working on 20 mil ore, and I recently got 20 mil Runecrafting. I did all of that at ZMI. I only started doing bloods recently. I've been doing a lot more mining, more fletching. I got 20 mil cooking, so that was good. I currently have 20 mil prep banked, so I just need to spend all the bones and use all the insold heads. That'll be coming soon. I think a couple of us are going to do a group session at the Worldy Altars just so we can work as a team to not die there by ourselves, essentially. I have 20 mil construction banked. The only banked, in air quotes, thing I need left is smithing. And I have the alks to get the GP for that, so that's pretty much banked. I just need to buy all the gold ores and shit. All the alchemy will be done with eventually. I haven't done much thieving. And the reason why I haven't done much thieving is because I do not want my account being banned. And you may be asking, well, Jordan, there's no way your account will be banned because you're not botting. And like, yeah, that's correct. But the problem with this is that there are people who I know for sure haven't been botting, but are being falsely banned for doing RD nights or thieving in general. So this is not something I want to put my account under risk at the moment until there's a game integrity update which addresses this issue of content in the game not being able to, and people not being able to discern whether or not someone's doing it legitimately or someone's botting it. There are cases where there are like 10 accounts, Fraser and Tyler found that have done ridiculous weeks and have not been banned, whereas people who do like 2-hour sessions, 6-hour sessions, 1-hour sessions, for instance, they get instantly picked up by the system and banned instantly, and knowing that they're doing it correctly. So it doesn't take much to get yourself to a position where you may be doing it authentically with either a foot pedal, a remap, or just even your mouse, and you can be banned for doing something legitimately. Considering that the main method for doing Ironman thieving at the moment is gem nights, and that is a method akin to RD nights where you click the same spot for a while. The only difference being that you need to equip necklaces, dodgy necklaces, and drink brews and stuff, and fill up gems with your gem pouch. I'm still not risking that, essentially. More about EHP changes. So the Ironman EHP changes have come through, and I quite like them. The Ironman EHP is around the most accurate it's ever been, and we did it before Vorkath came out, which was probably a mistake. But even with Vorkath coming out, with it being the best source for grapes, for it being a really good resource for prayer, it's basically our new Cerberus now, essentially. They're still quite accurate. It's faster to do prayer specifically at green dragons. Vorkath, it's back to the regular rates around 60k an hour or so. At green dragons it's 110. With the new altar, you don't get all your cooking at Zora anymore. You get it at Vorkath, but you get way more cooking than you need to. So you only pretty much do Vorkath until you have 200 mil cooking banked. Everything's kind of a side play, but through doing Vorkath, you get so much GP that most other methods for GP now I don't think are really that efficient. Blood runes may even be something which you only craft up to a specific point, and then you just go to your souls for the XP because you don't need any more GP. Battle staves, for instance, aren't necessarily something you need anymore, even though they're pretty good. They're pretty just chill GP you get daily just from the battle stats alone. It may not even be worth making air orbs anymore if you plan to do that much Vorkath. Crushed nests are now something that you can spend all your toad flax on. Previously, you'd only do more up to a certain point for 200 mil farming. Now you have all the crushed nests to use all your toad flax. Now toad flax are suddenly really good to get because the nest is 0 time from the Vorkath you'd be doing anyway. Any time spent after the 200 mil point at mole would not be worth it because that would only be like 30k an hour herb experience because of the time taken to get the secondary. Now you have so many more crushed nests that you can spend all the toad flax you get, meaning that toad flax is now a worthwhile seed to be growing again if you go long term, for instance. So Vorkath changed quite a bit, and I think it's okay. The only issue really is the impact of GP, the impact that it has on GP essentially. Basically solved a lot of GP problems, which is alright. Made all the buyables pretty easy. It made fletching way cheaper as well because you get a lot of rune dot tips, dragon arrowheads, and dragon bolts essentially, which you can fletch. So that cuts the cost of fletching quite a lot as well, because you get a significant amount of 0 time fletching XP there just from attaching feathers to things. Using ammo you would otherwise already use at a place where you need to use range ammo anyway. One thing to consider, which most people haven't necessarily figured out yet, I think, is that the general assumption really is that you should have 0 of every resource in your bank by the time you hit 200 mil, because that means you've spent everything as efficiently as possible. Meaning you'd probably want to use all your highest darts at places where you'd get the most increase. So using dragon darts at Vorkath, using rune darts at Vorkath, where else are you going to use them essentially? So yeah, Vorkath changed a few things. Dragon Slayer 2 overall added a few things really. It's just the dragon spot under Myth Guild, the blue dragon scale spot under Myth Guild. I kind of prefer that over Tavily. Even a Tavily might be faster. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So with Vorkath come the Slayer changes, which means that you end up doing a lot more Vorkath than usual. What this means is that some tasks which aren't worth it anymore, which are deemed to be worth it aren't necessarily worth it anymore because you don't really need them. Blood Velds, for instance, are good for they're quite high XP per hour, good melee XP. You get blood runes from them, and you get the insult heads. Well, the insult heads are covered by the prayer you get from Warcraft. Now, the blood runes, you're crafting loads of blood runes anyway, so you don't need blood velds for them. And the Slayer XP isn't necessarily needed because there are higher Slayer XP tasks you can do for just Slayer XP alone, one of them being Abbey Demons. So Abbey Demons would be efficient if there were worlds free where you have 2 rooms available, which is kind of annoying. Maybe doing cave horrors and Ankus instead of Abbey Demons would be more sufficient, but I'm going to try and do Abbey Demons, barraging them. Not just 1 room, but if I can find a 2-room world, fine. If not, I'll have to refigure out my Slayer. Red Dragons aren't worth doing anymore because of the prayer from Warcraft, which means the Wyverns aren't worth doing anymore because you get so much prayer from Warcraft as well. The only dragon worth doing is Blue Dragons, and of course you do that out of Warcraft. Gargoyles aren't worth doing anymore because you don't need the GP. Necreals and Dagonoths are still worth doing because you still need the herb, essentially. Steel Dragons might be worth doing because of the steel bars you get for the cannibals, which speed up Smoke Devil tasks, which you should be doing as well. Dust Devils are just really fat XP per hour, and you get magic. Well, you don't need the magic XP, but they're just fat XP per hour essentially, and you get the Dark Totems from them. So all these things really need to be figured out, and they're all kind of contingent on the herb EHP. So once the herb EHP is sorted, or if herb gets changed to the point where you get an overabundance of, say, Irrit herbs, for instance, then anything attached to it, like a 0 time in secondary, just completely fucks all of herb lore, because that just means you just do that 1 potion for all of 200 mil, and that's pretty much the rate. You don't need to do any herb tasks anymore. You don't need to do any farm runs, herb runs, for instance. So that's all kind of contingent on that. But currently, Slayer's a bit up in the air. It's a bit free for all. What I kind of propose is doing the best tasks really. So for Warcraft, you would do Smoke Devils, Dust Devils, you would do Dagonoths, Necreals. I would throw in Steel Dragons there. I would throw in Cuirass as well. Cuirass are really good because of those 0 time white berries. And then anything else after that is kind of optional. Those are really the only essential tasks. Anything else outside of that is kind of like you need to do this task for skip points. So any small skip point tasks like Zygamites or whatever might be worth doing. I don't know. Yeah, it's all a bit up in the air, but eventually we'll figure it out. If not, then it's just completely fucked. And as soon as a herb lore change comes in, then every herb seed I collected and every farm run I did was just completely useless. So we'll see. The last thing I kind of want to address for the ramble is some of the Twitter drama that I got into. Well, not got into, but kind of participated in vicariously over the past month or so. So the first one was the lake drama. Not drama. I don't want to say drama, right? Because it seems like it's bigger than it is, but it really isn't. I memed way too hard on Twitter. there's this general meme going around where because Lake died on his hardcore, any achievement that he did on his hardcore never counted anymore. So when Osiris, for instance, got the Infernal Cape on his hardcore Ironman, myself and a few others memed essentially that Osiris was the first one to get it because no other hardcore has it, even though a hardcore had already got it. And obviously this was the joke, but the way it falls apart is people taking themselves way too fucking seriously and having such a large attachment to the accomplishments that they have, that anyone who kind of makes a mockery or something that they hold dear, a reaction is installed in them which makes them truly despise the other person who's making a mockery of something which they perceive to be super insignificant. And what I found myself doing was bullying essentially. And once I slept on it, I kind of realized what I was doing. I was belittling someone who didn't deserve belittlement at all, even though I don't necessarily agree with who they are or necessarily like them as a person. I wouldn't consider them someone I would hang out with or be friends with or anything because of some other differences. It's not on me to make fun of someone for something they hold so dear, really. That in itself is I don't need to do anything else essentially to leave it at that. So I since deleted all those tweets about Lake and apologized to him personally, and everything's sorted with that sense. The second one I got into was with Zulu, and this was centered around the Warcraft drop stuff. where he was talking about he had a poll on his Twitter saying should jagex add a high unique to the Warcraft table to make it more worthwhile. This was currently when the drops were pretty shit, essentially, and the poll options he had were adding a dragon warhammer and dragon claws to it. And what I did was I quoted that poll and I said, in quotes, basically saying this is what he's saying, essentially, that I don't understand game design or economics. And he went back at me saying, you're an Iron Man, you don't understand economics. You play game mode, therefore what do you know about this? What's the game design about having a lizardman drop a dragon warhammer? Keep thinking that you're superior. And then Sick Nerd said, oh, don't worry, this guy's always a knob. And I've never interacted with Sick Nerd or Zuli before. This was the first time I've necessarily interacted with them. So this was very curious to me. So I asked Sick Nerd, do you have any examples of me doing this? And he never answered. So I got very confused as to how this came about. What he had seen, or what they had seen to make them have a what I deem false impression of me. If only they knew me, they would be saying way worse things. So unless I can't necessarily control what other people think about me, even if it's incorrect, I think it's completely incorrect. So I may come across as an arrogant asshole, and that's fine, but that's on you to perceive how I come across as. I don't intend to come across as an arrogant asshole. If you perceive me to be that, that's on you. I can't control the way you perceive me, essentially. And I can say that you're incorrect in that. If you got to know me, you'd probably either mesh with me or just completely still have that disagreement there, and that's completely fine. But at least have it based on something where you know the person, not just some cursory this guy's a knob, don't worry about it, and not being able to back that up with any examples at all. I get that you're a streamer. I get that Twitter is just kind of shitty, like a shitty platform for doing this type of thing. But if you're going to publicly put out there that this guy is always an undesirable human being who you don't want to interact with, aka a knob, essentially, at least back that up when confronted by it. So I initially, when Zulu popped up and said it wasn't my idea, this was just from a chat in Jace's stream, and I hosted the poll on Twitter, and I was like, okay, that's fine. If this isn't your opinion, then I apologize for thinking it was your opinion. And then not only 10 hours later saying, he posted a screenshot saying, oh, wouldn't it be so nice if Dragon Claws dropped from Warcraft or something? Like, oh, this would be so nice. I'm like, man, I apologize for absolutely fucking nothing. I think you don't understand game design or economics for thinking that putting Dragon Claws and Dragon Warhammer on already existing items on another boss, on another resource, is absolutely any good idea whatsoever. So I apologize for absolutely fucking nothing. I haven't deleted any of the apology tweets at all, because I still want there to be a record of how I was correct in that sense. It's unfortunate that I had a higher standard for people who I deemed to be intelligent enough to understand the implications and the consequences of what they were proposing for something which we both want to survive for the long term. It's very interesting for me to go, okay, we both want this game to succeed, but you're putting out there something which the game won't succeed, and I'm saying the game won't succeed. You won't be hitting your goal if you do this. So you're wrong about these two areas: game integrity, game design, and economics. But then you come back and you're like, no, I am correct. These will help the goals. It's like it's a completely incongruent thing. Anyway, so yeah, I have apologized to Lake because I was behaving inappropriately, but I absolutely do not apologize for what I think about the proposal in which Zulu put forward in terms of adding uniques that already exist into the game onto a new boss, just so it would improve the drop table. Add something new to it, buff the uniques that are already on there, come out with better items, but putting something that already exists skews incentives, fucks with the economy, and completely just disregards any sort of integrity issue, to the point where, why would you even suggest that in the first place? Surely the first thing would be like, oh, how would this affect the player base? How would this affect the economy? How would this affect the price of items? How would this affect all these other things? It's like there are better ways of suggesting these things. And then they just buffed the drop table to make it like Zora. And it's like, oh great. Even though there was a place in which me and Zulu agreed where it should be more like God Wars. The drop tables, the normal drops are kind of shit, but then there's the fact unique. That's fine. And it's not even necessarily the drops that were the problem with Vorkath. It's the fact that it's close to, it's another fucking boss which is close to the teleport. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that type of thing. Sure, like to get to God Wars, you either need to go grind an ecumenical key, and then you need to run all the fucking way to God Wars dungeon, and then you go into the room, or you need to run all the way to God Wars dungeon, and then get KC, and then go into the room, and then there's a price for going into the room, which means you're incentivized to stay there as long as possible. That's what happened with Abyssal Sire back in the day. The travel distance to the room was thought to be so long that it wasn't worth leaving and coming back because of the time taken to actually get there. Once you incentivize people through the time taken to get to a boss room versus the benefit of actually teleporting away from it, once that is skewed, then you have a situation where the bosses can be just spec down with a Dragon Warhammer and done, and teleport to your house, have every single teleport in the game in your house, like 3 ticks, like maximum 3 ticks away from whatever rejuvenation pool you have, and then you can teleport back to the boss room in a time where the cost benefit analysis comes out to where it was worth doing that. That's just shitty game design by Jagex. They should really have their bosses as far away from teleports as possible. Having Vorkath at Relica was just fucking stupid. They should have had it at like, I don't even know where they could have it. They could have had it at like, imagine having Vorkath at the tip top of Native Knot, where although you could use the Lyre through Ephemerate Elite to teleport to Native Knot, and then you can run like say 30 seconds to a boat, and then you take the boat. Whereas if you didn't have the Lyre, for instance, you can the really shitty way to get there would be to House Portal to Relica, and then run to Native Knot, take the boat to Native Knot, and then run from Native Knot to the boat, and then go to Vorkath. Or like you don't see anyone going to DK, like doing 1 kill trips at DKs, teleporting out and then running back. It's because the time taken to get there is the most vital part in terms of the balancing of the boss itself. Throwing Dragon Warhammers and Dragon Claws onto it will do absolutely fucking nothing to the actual big problem of it being too close to a fucking teleport. It's not even the pool that's the problem. The pool is fine. It just needs to be further away from, really super far away from any boss which it touches. And currently it isn't. And that's a sad thing. That's probably the biggest thing about their future design bosses. You can leave the Dragon Warhammer fine. You don't have to nerf the pool. You don't have to nerf anything else. Just from now on, any single boss that comes out needs to be as far away from a teleport as possible, and it needs to incentivize players to stay there for as long as possible, because that's where most of the fun comes in. Abyssal Sire, before the POH method, was so much fun because you had to basically manage your resources in a way where you stay there as long as possible. DKs is fun because you take so long to get there. You have to manage your resources in a way which makes you stay there as long as possible. Same with Bandos. Same with all God Wars. Yeah, there's a cost of going into the room, not a cost of dying. You shouldn't attach the cost of dying. You should attach the cost of going into the room, because then you're incentivized to stay there as long as possible. There's it rewards you for playing well in a way which doesn't punish you for dying. Because if you die, then sure, you have to run back and get all your items and stuff like that. The problem isn't attaching the 100k cost to dying as well. It's about if you added the cost of going into the room, and the cost doesn't have to be monetary; it has to be time worth as well. The time spent otherwise where you could be doing other things which would earn you the money, essentially, and it needs to be a worthwhile cost benefit, essentially. So the main issue here isn't a drop table, isn't adding Dragon Warhammers or Dragon Claws, or isn't the Dragon Warhammer itself, or isn't the POH pool, or isn't the teleports in your house or anything. It's the time taken to get to the boss and the incentive for staying in the room as long as possible, which rewards skillful play and punishes you time-wise, not resource-wise, for only doing 1 kill trips. That's what I'm going to end the video on. Thanks for watching this ramble, and I will see you next month. Cheers. Bye.